Hey everyone, and good morning. This is day number 6 on the trail for me. So I hope you enjoyed those first 2 episodes. I'm really enjoying recording this, and I'm really glad I could upload those yesterday when I was in Jefferson. Huge shout out to the Jefferson Market. They unexpectedly had Wi-Fi, which was actually pretty fast, so that's how I uploaded those episodes. And so I wanted to check in and just let you know how the trail's been going for me. I'm at about, I guess, mile 75 right now, and I'm feeling really good. Things have been getting a little more challenging. It started raining, I guess, 2 days ago, and raining a lot, and it just kind of adds more more work to the daily routine. You have to think more about what rain gear you're putting on. I'll talk more about that gear at some point, but there's a balance between having too much gear on and getting too hot, and then if you don't have enough on, you're going to get cold and wet, and then you're hiking, and you don't know how much body heat you're going to generate and all that. So constantly stopping and taking off clothes, putting clothes on, and then the mosquitoes have been really bad the last couple of days. So there's been some challenges, but sun's coming out right now. It's also kind of more cold now. And then the trail itself, it went from around 8,000 feet all the way up close to 11,000 in one day. So that was a big day of hiking. I hiked probably 19 miles that day so I could get to Jefferson kind of early yesterday. And but physically I'm feeling really good. I'm going to talk more about that later today. And yeah, so I had my first trail town resupply, and so basically I just have to hitchhike into the town, and so that only took about 5 or 10 minutes yesterday, and a really nice couple picked me up and took me into town. And then to get back to the trail, I didn't even have to hitchhike because I went to this Jefferson Market, which they accept hiker packages, so I sent my next food package there. And I guess this couple who was in the market, they noticed I was a hiker, and so I was like packing up my food outside, and they just came up to me and asked if I wanted to ride back to the trailhead. So of course I said yes, and so shout out to Good Cat. They're both hikers, and he actually has a little pamphlet with all of these different restaurants in the trail towns that are really hiker friendly and low cost. So that was really great. So that's the kind of cool stuff that happens when you're out here. And as far as this blog goes, I hope you're liking it. If you really want to give me some feedback or something, we have this subreddit, and this is a great resource that I hope we can start to take advantage of at some point. As more people are watching this and maybe want to get involved, it's basically a discussion forum. So if you look in the description of the podcast or the video that you're watching, you'll find a link to it. It's reddit.com/r/wildboro podcast. And you can post any kind of media you want there. You can post photos and videos or just comments. So this would be great to make a discussion at some point. I'd like to see all the cool stuff that you guys are doing out there, and maybe you think this is like a cool or inspirational thing, but I know you all are doing cool and inspirational things. I know for a fact that a lot of you are. And so if you ever have the time and want to share that stuff, I would love to read about that. And that's what the subreddit's for. And another note, I'm publishing this as YouTube videos and just as audio only podcast episodes because I'm tired of sitting and looking at a TV screen. So maybe some of you are too. And the idea with the audio only episodes is that I'm mostly just talking here. So why not just listen to the episode instead of watch it on your computer and go for a walk? In honor of me walking 480 miles, just go for a walk for 30 minutes and listen to the podcast episode. And then even better, go for a walk in a beautiful place and take a photo of that and then post it to the subreddit. I would be so happy to see stuff like that. So so anyway, that's kind of the how things are going, and I'll be talking more in a bit. All right, I just had my chia seed pudding and matcha. So it's another day on the trail, and what I wanted to talk today about is how I came to be out here hiking like 14, 15 miles a day with no problem whatsoever. I told you I hiked a 19-mile day the other day with like well over 3,000 feet of elevation gain throughout the day, and today I'm just walking totally pain-free. So how is this possible? This has been a really long process for me, and I've learned a lot, and maybe you can learn something from this. In late 2017, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and at the time I was in my late 20s. If you looked at me, you probably would have thought that I was in decent shape, but when I actually tried to go out and do fun stuff and start hiking and stuff, and playing ultimate frisbee, everything started hurting. So what happened was I played ultimate frisbee with a coworker at this pickup league, and I was just in so much pain after the game. The outside of my feet were really hurting to the point I thought I even had stress fractures. And I had to take a week off from playing ultimate frisbee, and like it was really painful just to walk. And again, I'm in my late 20s. The other thing was like I was getting outplayed on the frisbee field by people who were way older than me, who were good athletes, but like I should have been able to perform better, basically, is how I felt. I was always very athletic growing up. I played soccer and baseball and stuff. So again, I should have been in the prime of my life physically, and I was just nowhere close to that. So like I said, this was 2017, and this has been this 6-year process, 6+ years process to work all this stuff out. So I did web development and was basically sitting at a desk all day, and it was really just this rude awakening where I was like, wow, look at where my body is at and where I feel like it could or should be. I wanted to be able to go out and do fun things, but I just couldn't do it because, so even hiking, like I would go on a 5-mile hike in Arizona, and there's some steep hikes out there. And so like going downhill, my knees are hurting and everything. And I was not in a good place physically, was the reality. When I really tried to do real stuff with my body, I couldn't without something hurting. So that was 6 years ago. That's how long it's taken for me to work that out. And that's the damage that can accumulate by just sitting all the time, living a sedentary lifestyle and never really going out and using your body like how it's designed to be used. It's not designed to sit in a chair all day, that's for sure. So how I started tackling this problem was I was like encountering all these obstacles, and each obstacle I had to figure out how to fix the problem. So that first tendonitis issue, I looked into it, and turns out it's probably peroneal tendonitis, which is because of tight calf muscles. It's this tendon that runs on the outside of your ankle, and that was really inflamed. So I figured out that if I stretched out my soleus muscle, which is like this inner calf muscle so like I ran cross country in high school and stuff, that was one muscle I never really stretched out. So there's a specific stretch to stretch your soleus muscle, and I started doing that and getting relief. So probably after 2 or 3 weeks, that was better. So that was like a great accomplishment, but that was just the first in a very long line of problems like that I've had to do all this research to overcome and figure out what is causing this pain and what is causing this problem. So I really just started taking my physical health more seriously, because the thing that was bothering me was, like I said, I was getting outplayed on the frisbee field and not moving like I felt like I should be able to. So I started working out again, and the first program I did was by, can't remember his name offhand. Oh, Stu Miller or Stu Smith. He's a trainer for the Navy SEALs, but he's really big on calisthenics and body weight exercises, which I'm kind of into, I guess. I don't know, just personal preference. So I started doing his programs, and he has like a couch to like for people coming off the couch, which is what I was doing basically, to get back in shape, like a 90-day fitness program. And I'll try to post a link to it. So the first days are just like go for a 20-minute walk and drink a lot of water and do a full body stretch. And that's the kind of stuff I was doing. So I started stretching a lot because right from the beginning, I felt like these injuries were a result of tight muscles. Just from not moving a lot. I was just working at a desk 8 hours a day. And just walking and then, just doing some push-ups, doing assisted pull-ups at first. Yeah, just doing some basic body weight exercises, probably for like 45 minutes a day, and doing the full body stretch. So that kind of started to get things back in gear for me. I was able to move a lot better on the Frisbee field. I would say it took 3 or 4 months. And the stretching really, I think, helped me out a lot. I was noticing a difference in the stretches, just feeling more flexible and having better range of motion with my joints. So that was good. Really good sign of progress. But that was kind of just the beginning. So 2019, I took the entire summer off and just went hiking all summer. And I was very conservative in how many miles I was hiking at first. Because of all this tendonitis problems I was having, I didn't want to run into pain. And through that fitness program, I had started trying to run long distances and stuff would start hurting again, like my knees or my hips. And that was typically my experience with running. So I just gave up on running eventually. And I just knew I was going to run into problems with hiking long distances every day. And I did. So, but I started out the summer hiking probably like 6 or 8 miles a day. And doing that at least probably 5 or 6 days a week. And things were going okay at first. My backpack was also really heavy at the time. It probably was like 30 to 40 pounds. This was before I knew about ultralight backpacking. So the 6 to 8 miles were probably a lot harder on my body than that would be today. But things were okay, and eventually I kind of started increasing the mileage each day. I got up to like 10 miles a day. By the end of the trip, I actually hiked the John Muir Trail for the first time, and for that I was hiking 15 miles a day. And from a cardio perspective, I was fine. But this is when I ran into my next big problem, which is I started noticing like a slight pain in my feet just in the mornings towards the end of the trail. And I'm like, well, it's just from hiking every day, so that'll go away when I'm not doing that anymore. And I finished the trail. I went back to Phoenix and went back to being a web developer, and I'm waking up every morning and my feet are still hurting. I'm like, what's going on here? And I'm trying to go out hiking and stuff, and like my feet were hurting, so I couldn't even do that. And I think I even had to take some time off from Ultimate Frisbee. I missed out on going to Havasupai Falls. I had a permit, but my feet were just bothering me. I had to finally stop. So eventually I figured out that I probably had plantar fasciitis. And this can be a real lingering problem. I know a lot of people right now who have this. And so I started getting pretty worried because I had actually made an arrangement with my job to take the next summer off and go hiking again. And I'm like, if I can't get over this issue, then what am I going to do all summer? So I just started looking into all these different stretches, but I like to get to the root cause of things. And I found this YouTube video by, the YouTube channel is Athlete in X. This guy, I guess he used to be a trainer for like the Mets. So he's kind of goofy, but he was saying that the root cause is really tight hips, because if you have tight hips, then that's affecting your gait, how you're actually walking, and you're putting pressure on the wrong places, and this is straining your feet. Looking back, there was a lot of other factors. I was wearing hiking boots at the time, which were not good for my feet, I'm sure, and then my pack weight was really heavy. But I also was very aware that I had tight hips just from sitting all the time. So I tried to address this root problem. by going to yoga for the first the first time ever, and that was quite an experience going to the yoga class for the first time. I had no idea what I was doing, and like I was the only guy there. You know, it's mostly women going to these classes, but I was just going to try to get my body straightened out. I felt like I should be able to do these things without being in pain, and I wanted to start to tackle more of these root problems. So eventually, I started going to yoga all the time, and I remember the first time I tried to get into pigeon pose, the instructor was like, "What?" She's like, "What are you doing all day?" She's like, "Are you a runner or a biker or something?" I was like, "Yeah, well, I do hike a lot." She could not believe like how tight my hips were. So eventually, over months and months, it got to the point where she's like, "Wow, you've made a lot of progress on your pigeon pose," and so that was good. But as far as the plantar fasciitis itself, I did eventually find just some specific stretches. So, I mean, I was never stretching my feet out. I never even thought about that. I was stretching a lot on the trail, actually, but never my feet. So I felt kind of dumb for that. And I did find all these feet stretches. And when I started doing those, immediately I started to feel relief. There's a specific stretch for your plantar fascia. You basically pull your big toe back towards your ankle, and that stretches your plantar fascia. So that started to help me get relief in my feet. And I was wearing orthotics for a while, and I tried to wean off of that because pretty early on I was reading how your feet, you need your arch to be active because that's a very important mechanism in conserving energy. There's a reason why we have that arch, and it flattens out when you take a step and put weight on your foot, and then when you go to take the next step, it springs back into the arch. So that basically conserves a lot of energy, and it's really important to have that. And if you're wearing these orthotics for plantar fasciitis, it's basically taking your arch out of the equation completely. So I didn't want to be dependent on orthotics the rest of my life. And fortunately, I was able to wean myself off of them. And I was just religiously doing these stretches I had found and little exercises for my feet, like you scrunch up a towel under your toes, or you pick up a pencil with your toes. And this is good exercise for your feet. So I'll talk more in a minute about feet, but our feet are really neglected, and we have them in very stiff shoes a lot of the time if we're not thinking. I mean, so my feet were basically very weak, and so by strengthening and stretching my feet, I overcame the plantar fasciitis issue specifically. And the yoga, I came to enjoy it a lot. The place I was going was really cool. You kind of get to know the teachers, and I had great teachers who they would challenge me specifically, and so you can tune yoga to how hard or easy you want it. And as I progressed, they were giving me harder stuff to do, and it was a nice little community that we had at the yoga classes. So I really enjoyed that. It is a relaxing time. There's a lot of focus on breathing and stretching, trying to address some of this tension that we can hold in our body and our muscles. So that was really all a great experience. So summer of 2020, I went hiking again all summer, and the plantar fasciitis was gone, which was awesome. That was a great accomplishment. However, when I finished the summer, the injury I had at the end of that summer was, I would say, knee, like runner's knee. My knee was pretty sore by the end of that summer, and I probably had some IT band issues as well. So it was just like I went hiking all summer, I had a great time, but I walked out of the mountains feeling worse than, I was hurting to the point where I had to take several months off from hiking. When I got back to Phoenix and went back to work, so that was pretty frustrating. The other thing that happened was, as I got more and more into yoga, they're big on these arm balances. So basically, it's good for strengthening your upper body. Like you're basically supporting your entire body weight on your hands and forearms in this one crow pose. And that was just fun, you know. I wanted to get stronger in my upper body, and so I was practicing that a lot. The thing is, those are very hard on your shoulders. It's kind of like doing a push-up. Push-ups are also very hard on your shoulders, and I had actually had a torn labrum in both shoulders about 10 years prior, and the one shoulder, my left shoulder, always still bothered me. I think it's probably just like a shoulder impingement at this point. So doing these arm balances, like, it would just start hurting for days afterward. And it got to the point where I was like, I have to just stop doing these because it's hurting. So again, I'm like trying to do stuff with my body and it's just hurting. And I wanted to get away from that pain cycle and leave all the pain behind. And again, trying to get more to the root cause of stuff. So I'm like, why is my shoulder hurting? And I had a strong feeling it was related to my desk work as a web developer. And I got this book called Deskbound by Kelly Starrett, and it basically just lays out how harmful sitting is on your body. And I was suffering from what I believe is it's a muscle imbalance pattern from sitting all day. You have your arms in front of you, which causes really tight chest muscles, and then your shoulder and back muscles get really weak from being stretched out all the time. And then your lower body, your hip flexors get really tight from sitting, and your glutes get really weak from sitting all the time. And they make a great point in that book, which is that you literally cannot engage your glute muscles while you're sitting. And that's the biggest muscle in your body. So imagine how important that is to circulation. This is why people get swollen ankles if they sit for a long time, because you're not able to engage your glutes and there's basically no circulation happening to your lower body. So think about how harmful that is to your muscles and how important of a muscle that is to your whole body. So this is what I was learning, was just how everything should be working and how far I was from that. You know, your glutes, that book explains how your glutes are important in when you engage your glutes, it sets your pelvis in the right orientation, and then your lower abs are really kind of locking that in, and that's like putting your whole lower body in the right position. And that whole area in your pelvis is really where your upper body is connected to your lower body. So if you have an imbalance there in your pelvis area, like, it's going to throw off everything. So imagine being in this compromised state and then going and walking 15 miles a day with a 40-pound backpack on, which is what I did. Like, what do you think is going to happen? I mean, that's why I'm hurting, you know? So I was kind of figuring out the problem, but it's like, well, what's the answer to this? And so this book, Deskbound, Kelly Starrett, he mentions that as soon as like the 5th grade, they notice that children start running differently, because that's when they start wearing these padded shoes with like heels on. And he talked about the book Born to Run. So I'm like, okay, that sounds interesting, because what I was getting at was just, I have poor posture, and it's like, how do I start to fight that if I'm working 8 hours a day at a desk? How do I counteract this problem, the root of the problem? I got the book Born to Run, and I mean, this is a book that changed my life for sure. And I know it's changed a lot of other people's lives. So the basic point of the book is that the human body has evolved to run long distances. Like, literally, that's why it evolved the way it did, was to travel long distances and basically be barefoot. People would run for long distances to chase down wild animals to eat and wear extremely minimal protection on their feet. There's definitely no arch support or anything. And they just talk about how a lot of the time we're wearing shoes that are very stiff and they're not shaped like the human foot. They're very pointy in the toe box, and there's a heel. And they just talk about how that throws off how we move, because that's not how we're designed to move naturally. And there is a natural way to move. And if you don't have a thickly padded heel, So basically, they talk about running and running injuries, which again, I was having. And they blame it on poor running technique. A lot of people land on their heels with your leg out in front of you, and it's a recipe for disaster because that's putting a lot of stress on your bones, basically, and it should be your muscles that are absorbing all that force and impact, and your body's designed to absorb the force and impact. So we don't need these fancy shoes because so the right way to run is with your feet directly under you, landing on your forefoot, and it's all soft tissue that's absorbing the force, and that soft tissue can recover a lot faster than your bones and your ligaments. So, you know, when you stop and think about it and lay it out that way, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You know, that's why I'm getting injured. So I was figuring out these core problems, but still actually getting to a solution was kind of escaping me a little bit. But that Born to Run thing, I felt like if I started running the right way, then at least while I'm running, my body will be in the right position, and maybe that'll start to address some of these shoulder problems I'm having. So the issue was they tell you what the problem is, but they don't really tell you, like, they didn't have a step-by-step way to run the quote-unquote right way on your forefeet. So I got inspired, though. So I switched to these minimal shoes. They're called Xero shoes. It's Xero with an X, Xero. And that's when I came out to Colorado and hiked 600 miles in Xero shoes. And I would say I had mixed results with that. So these shoes are basically like slippers with rubber on the bottom. And there's no arch support or anything. I mean, you can roll the thing up in your hand. So the hike was a success in that I didn't develop plantar fasciitis again. The thing that started happening was I started getting Achilles tendonitis, because when you switch from shoes with heels to shoes with no heels, they're called Xero drop. Xero drop refers to the how high the heel is compared to the forefoot. And I was wearing Brooks Cascadia before, which I think are like 4 or 6. I think it's measured in centimeters. So there's so the heel is basically 4 or 6 inches high. And I went right from that to the Xero shoes, which have 0 heel. So I started having Achilles tendonitis, and that really stayed with me right up until when I hiked the Arizona Trail this year. So that was like 3 years. So the other thing about it was those shoes, they just didn't have enough padding for walking. But I did make it. Again, though, I had pretty bad knee tendonitis at the end of that hike, to the point where I almost left the trail about 30 miles from Rocky Mountain National Park because my knee was hurting so much. Again, I had to take all this time off from hiking when I got back to Phoenix. And I'm just like, how long is this going to go on? And I really gave up on hiking. I got into rock climbing, again, to try to strengthen my upper body. I was still having a lot of shoulder problems, and I just kind of gave up on hiking and running altogether because I'd had so much pain with that. And then climbing injuries are very common. Again, it was just dealing with a lot of tendonitis all the time. I was having some, I would have occasional wrist or elbow soreness from climbing. And so it's just this long, frustrating journey of wanting to do fun stuff with my body and always running into pain when I started to do that stuff. So a big breakthrough for me came when in early 2023, the book Born to Run 2 came out. And this was like the missing link. So they wrote this book, Born to Run, in 2009, and all these people got inspired to start running and stuff, but they didn't give you a step-by-step guide, like how to transition from running the wrong way to the right way. And there's other books out there. I tried reading this book, Chi Running, by Danny Dreyer. He actually has an entire book about walking the right way, which I also read, Chi Walking, and I think he's onto the right thing, but the way he explained it was just kind of hard for me to really put into practice. So I get this Born to Run 2 book, and again, at the time, I was, I was maybe trying to get back into running, but I was running I was slowly building up to running 2 miles 2 times a week because I was so scared about getting injured again when I started running. And this book came out, and they have this drill. It's called the 5-minute fix. I actually should demo it for you. Maybe I will. So this drill, you should perform it with a wall right behind you. And basically, you run in place. You put the song B-52 by the Rock Lobsters on, which is the right cadence. So you want a fast cadence. And then you run with your back right up against the wall. And you just run in place. So the thing about this drill is that it prevents you from kicking your heels back. So that's the first thing I realized I was doing wrong. And then the other thing is it's not possible to land on your heels when you're running in place. So I'm landing on my forefeet by doing this. And it's called the 5-minute fix for perfect running form. So that was really a game changer for me because I instantly realized I had been kicking my heels back. And I made that change. And so the whole thing about running the right way is that you want to be engaging your glutes. And when you're landing on your forefoot, so they get into that book, Born to Run 2, they have you do a lot of foot, they call it foot core, so strengthening your feet, balancing on your foot, and that balance, it engages your whole muscle chain all the way up your leg, up into your glute, and you want to be engaging your glutes. There's a reason why those are the biggest muscles in your body, because we should be using it all the time. And there's this concept of glute amnesia, which is just from sitting all the time. We forget how to use our glutes. And then our glutes aren't engaged, so our body basically recruits other muscles to do the stabilizing job that the glutes should be doing. And it's usually your hip flexors. And so that's where all this quad, knee pain stuff starts, because you're overworking these muscles that are doing way more work than they should be. Well, your glutes are just doing nothing. And that's really the whole problem. So this running the right way, it's engaging your glutes. And they have all these drills in the book of just doing these little mini wall squats. And it's not even so much about like getting your muscle tired. It's about retraining your brain and reconnecting all these neural pathways in your brain to just remember what it feels like to use your glutes the right way. So they have you do those kind of drills to like wake up your muscles before you go for a run. And so this book was it was such a game changer for me. It was still a long process to build up the mileage with running, but really, so I started really slow at first because, again, I'm running in these Zero shoes. And when you're running that way, it just puts way more strain on your calf muscles. So I would run about 1 mile or for like 10 minutes, and my calf muscles were just extremely sore the next day. But that's good because it means you're starting to actually use those muscles for the first time. And you just have to be patient at first. It just takes a long time to build up. And they have shoe recommendations in the book and everything. I really like the Zero Shoes HFS for road running. Again, they're basically like slippers, but they're so comfortable and lightweight. And if you give yourself time with this could be really, this has changed my physical fitness. This was really one of the key things that helped me. So they have a 90-day running program in that book, and they have you pick out what's called a big deal distance, which is some arbitrary distance that if a friend came to you and said, hey, let's go run X miles today, what would seem like a big deal to you? And so I picked 8 miles for mine because I was used to hiking like 15 plus miles at this point, but running, I had probably never run more than 6 miles, even though I did cross country in high school. And this 90-day program, it's all based around that distance you pick out. So it's very customized to where you're at and what you want to accomplish. So the workout will be like run 50% of your big deal distance today. And they have different speeds for you to run at. And there's also a range. So they give you a range of minutes you can run per day. And I usually went on the low end of the range just because that made it easier to be consistent with it. And since I was new to running, I just took it easy on my body. But even within, I mean, it was pretty soon. I would say within the first 2 or 3 weeks, I went on this group run in Phoenix and I ran 4 miles on the trail, which was way farther than I had run in years. And I just would have been too scared to run that far before because I would have felt like something would have started hurting. But I had two or 3 weeks of practice, at least at that point, of this technique. And I just tried to do that as best I could on that 4-mile run. And the only thing that hurt the next day was I had sore glute muscles, which that was a great sign because it meant that I was using my glute muscles. And that's kind of the whole goal of this, is to start using the right muscles again. And the glutes are a huge part of that. So that's why this Born to Run 2 program was so helpful for me, because it specifically addresses this root problem that I think was leading to a lot of these other issues. The whole point of Born to Run is that if everything's in alignment and you're doing stuff the right way, basically nothing should hurt. And human beings have this like supernatural ability to run long distances. They talk about all these ultra marathoners and stuff, and this is what the human body is capable of. And I wanted to do that myself. I had never thought about running a marathon until I read Born to Run. And they just talk about all these people who are running ultra marathons. And I was like, if they can do this, I can do that. So I've made that a long-term goal. I still haven't run a marathon. But with this Born to Run 2 program, I got to the end of the program and I entered a 15K race in Phoenix, which was 9 miles. So that was approximately what my big deal distance was. And I ran the whole race and I felt fine the next day. As far as I remember, maybe there was some slight muscle soreness or something, but I ran a 15K trail race and I averaged a 9-minute 30-second pace, which I thought was pretty respectable. And I never would have been able to do that without Born to Run 2. So thank you to Eric Orton and Chris McDougall for writing that book. And especially Eric Orton he's got a lot of great YouTube content and answers a lot of these questions about injuries. All these injuries are just holding us back. They're holding us back from this amazing potential that we have in our bodies to go out and do stuff like this, you know. It's awesome to be out here, and it requires a certain amount of physical competence, I would say. And if I'm not hurting, it's a way more enjoyable experience. So that was a huge step for me. I ended up running a half marathon in Salt Lake City last summer. It was pretty amazing because there was 900 people in the race, and I finished in the top 200, and I actually averaged under 8 minutes per mile. The race there, it was the Deseret News half marathon, and it was really cool because it follows the path that the first Mormon pioneers came into Salt Lake City. So you run down this canyon where they first entered the city, and so the whole race is downhill, and then you finish in this parade route. They have this Pioneer Day, which July 24th is the first day the Mormons showed up in Salt Lake City. So it was just an awesome thing. And to run a half marathon, which I never really had on my radar, was an amazing accomplishment. And I ran it in the Zero shoes, HFS, which have no arch support whatsoever. The only thing was my calf muscles were extremely sore. The next day, not so much, but 2 days after, it's like I could barely walk down the steps because, again, you're using your calf muscles instead of pounding on your joints. And just running 13 miles downhill was a lot. So my calf muscles were really sore, but other than that, I didn't have any joint pain. So that was an amazing accomplishment. So that was a huge step for me. And again, I'm telling you how I figured this stuff out. It's really about getting back to natural movement, which Chris McDougall, he wrote another book called Natural Born Heroes. And it's just getting back to how we should be moving and living as human beings, and what we should be eating. And if you have all of that stuff, like, you shouldn't have any pain. So I was still having Achilles tendonitis. It only bothered me when I hiked. The running did not irritate my Achilles tendonitis, which is why I was running all last summer. But finally, I just wanted to get out in the backcountry again, and I stumbled across this book. Well, I didn't stumble across it. So Chris McDougall, well, okay, in Born to Run 2, they have an entire chapter about your diet. That is the first time I ever heard of this high-fat, low-carb diet. And they talk about Phil Maffetone, who is a famous endurance coach. He's worked with a lot of famous rock bands. He explains in his book how that came about, but he has coached some of the most successful he's coached Mark Allen, who's one of the most successful triathletes of all time, and this other guy, Stu Middleman, who's one of the most successful ultra distance runners of all time. And these guys were around in like the 80s, 90s, which is kind of when Phil Maffetone was really active. So I heard of Phil Maffetone then. I read Chris McDougall's book, Natural Born Heroes, and he has another chapter devoted to Phil Maffetone. And running the half marathon, I did great the first part of the race, but the last part of it was a real struggle, the last 3 miles. And Phil Maffetone, in this book, Natural Born Heroes, he talks about how he can visually see when runners go from the aerobic zone to the anaerobic zone, and how their running technique breaks down and it becomes a lot more labored. And that's exactly how I felt. I kind of hit a wall in that half marathon. So, but I had never heard of this aerobic versus anaerobic thing before. So I got one of his books. It's this big book of endurance training. It's basically a compilation of everything he learned over like 3 or 4 decades of coaching endurance athletes of all abilities. And if I had had this book from the get-go, like, it would have saved me years of pain and suffering, probably. And that's why I've sent it to so many of you. But in this book, there's really these 2 big concepts that he covers. One of them is that high-fat, low-carb diet. So I was reading that as I was getting back on the trail hiking last year. And that was all news to me. I never heard of this diet before I really understood the importance of it. So I pretty much switched to that diet immediately, and I still had Achilles tendonitis all last summer as I hiked. I ended up hiking like 600 miles in the Sierras, which was awesome. But the whole time I had this kind of lingering Achilles tendonitis. Although I switched my diet at that point, got all the carbs out of there, and then the tendonitis never really got worse, which I took as maybe a sign that it was working. So that's one major concept in his book. The other concept, which I really like, is this concept of aerobic training. And this gets really to, I think, what's the root cause behind all these issues I've been having, is he talks about the effect of stress on your body and how stress leads to pain. And so he preaches this heart rate based training, which I think he was kind of the pioneer in the 80s of using a heart rate monitor. His whole thing is you figure out your maximum aerobic heart rate, which is 180 minus your age. And so I won't reveal my age. It's in the mid 140s. So, and then you just don't go over that heart rate when you train. And he says train for a maximum of 2 hours per day. And so like a 1 hour workout for him would be, you take 15 minutes to work up from resting heart rate to your maximum aerobic heart rate. You stay at your maximum aerobic heart rate for 30 minutes, and then you cool down for 15 minutes back to resting. And he's real big on that warm up and cool down. He explains why it's so important for your body and for injury prevention. And that heart rate is not very high. I had been hiking all the time, and when I went to actually try to do this and run, I could not run very far without my heart rate going above that threshold. So when I go do this aerobic training, it's basically a combination of running and walking for me, which, I mean, given all the hiking I'm doing, it's like, So he talks about in the book how you can appear to be a fit person, but really how healthy are you? And he talks about the difference between health and fitness. And he had a lot of athletes come to him who were very successful athletes, like maybe they'd finished in the top 3 in some marathon or something, and they come to him with some sort of pain, and he has them test their aerobic system, which it's this low intensity part of your physical fitness that we always overlook because we're in this go, go, go culture, and it's like work hard all the time, and if you're not lifting weights and throwing up, like, you're not doing it right. And we neglect this low stress part of your body. And that's why I like this approach so much, because again, we're working all the time and we're always stressed out, and then we go to the gym and we're working really hard. We think we need to get sore to be doing anything. But as he explains in the book, you're just adding stress on top of your body, and that can actually be having a negative effect and causing these injuries. So what I was saying was, he has these accomplished athletes come to him with pain, and he has them test their aerobic system, which he does by, you go run/walk 5 miles at your maximum aerobic heart rate, and you record your mile pace. And so these athletes would only be able to manage like a 10-minute mile at their maximum aerobic heart rate. So the point of that is that you can be very fit but have a very underdeveloped aerobic system, and that ultimately can lead to a lot of injuries. And so in his book, he talks about all of the benefits of having a strong aerobic system, and we just don't think that going out for a walk is really doing anything, or doing this low intensity exercise is doing anything. But as he explains in the book, you eventually will get faster at that low heart rate. It's just that you're doing that in a way that's not stressing your body out at all. And this is addressing all these injury problems, and then you're also getting all these benefits from having a strong aerobic system. And why this resonated with me was, this is the perfect way to fight this high stress culture that we have, is to start to develop all of these low stress parts of our bodies that are very neglected and underworked. We're always working the fight or flight part of our psyche and our bodies, and we're never working he talks about the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. So I forget which one tells your body that it's okay to relax, but we're never working that part. And we think we always just have to be pressing the gas pedal all the time. And he's telling you that you don't have to be doing that. You will get faster eventually at a low stress place for your body. And the other big benefit for me was that when I was running in preparation for this half marathon, it was like I was running up in the mountains around Salt Lake, and it was hard. And now when I do this low stress workout, it's very easy on my body. It's not something that is very difficult. So I'm able to do it more consistently, and it's not something that I dread working out. I look at it more just like, that's my hour when I go outside and get some fresh air and get a little exercise for my body. And I can do that 5 days a week, no problem. So over a long period of time, he has you do that test once a month, and you should start seeing your mile pace go down. And that's when you're making this real progress. It's real fundamental progress on your body. And that's a huge part of our health. So with this high stress culture, again, he would have these athletes coming to him, and they're like, I'm having some knee problem or something. And he's like, tell me about your daily schedule. What's your day like? And they're like, well, I wake up early and work out for 2 hours, and then I have my own business, so working all day, and then I have a family with a bunch of little kids, so going home and taking care of them, and then getting up and doing that again the next day. And he basically tells them, just cut your workout time in half and get some extra sleep. And what happens is they actually start improving by working out less. So it's proving his point that the stress is actually having a negative effect. And one of the exercises in the book is you just list out of everything that's causing stress in your life. And he says, reduce what you can. You're never gonna be able to reduce everything completely, but try to reduce the amount of stress in your life as much as possible. And then it's like, just treat your body the right way. Like, I don't like having all this pressure and extra, I don't like being overworked, and your body doesn't like that either. So if you treat your body the right way and just give it time to improve, it will. And that's everything that's in the big book of endurance training by Phil Maffetone, plus a lot of other stuff. So I highly recommend that book. So how this affected me was I changed my diet, which I already talked about, and I intentionally tried to de-stress. And why that affects your injuries is that if you're mentally stressed, what I'm finding is I am subconsciously tensing certain muscles, which he talks about. Tendinitis is really a result of a muscle imbalance. And a muscle imbalance is when one muscle is too tight and the other muscle is too stretched out and weak. So why is that muscle tight? Well, the root cause of that is, I believe, and what Phil Maffetone talks about, is mental stress. If you're stressed out and your muscles are tense and then you go to try to move, you're not moving with full range of motion. So I mentioned I had this left shoulder injury. What I'm finding is that I am basically constantly tensing muscles in my neck and shoulder, especially on the left side. So imagine that my muscles are constantly tense in my shoulder, and then I go to move my shoulder with limited range of motion. I mean, stuff is going to start rubbing against each other that shouldn't be, and eventually that's going to start hurting. And that's what's happening, and that's why this mental stress is really the root of everything, I think. This plus this inflammatory diet, I believe, was the root cause of all these tendinitis problems I've been having. So I took the whole winter off just to try to focus on those problems. It took 4 or 5 months just to do that and relax every day. And I was on a skiing road trip, so just taking time off from work and eating the right food. And then I got on this Arizona trail, and it's like the Achilles tendinitis was gone. I jumped right into hiking 20-mile days. Shout out to my hiking partner, Wrong Way. Thanks for helping me push the pace. And I didn't know how my body would respond to that, but the Achilles tendinitis, maybe I slightly felt it sometimes at night after I stopped hiking and stuff, but it basically was gone, and I just felt better and better as the trail went on. I took a lot of rest. That's something else that, starting to get some good views, which I'll share in a minute. Phil Maffetone talks about the importance of resting, which I never knew that your body builds muscle while you're sleeping. And that's why it's important to get enough sleep and take rest. Take days off occasionally, don't work out every single day. And I was able to take 2 entire weeks off during the Arizona trail, and when I got back on the trail, I felt even better. There was even less pain. So I really felt like my body was healing. And when I finished the trail, I had never felt so good physically in my entire life. And that was 800 miles of pretty challenging terrain in 2 months. And that's my story. And that's why it took me 6 years to get there. I just told you everything I had to work through. So I hope that maybe you got something out of that, or it helps you out somehow, because this has been huge for me personally. Physical health is huge in having a healthy and happy life. I've come to know a lot of people through the Arizona Mountaineering Club, shout out to the AMC, who are in their 70s and they're just still out there loving life and having adventures. And that's what I want to be doing for the next several decades. So figuring all this stuff out, I think, is going to go a long way to me doing what I want to do in life, and not just being stuck behind a desk forever. So that is my fitness story, health and fitness. I'm standing here on the Continental Divide. I'm here at Georgia Pass, and I'm up around 11,900 feet, and starting to get into the real scenery that this trail is known for. The Colorado Trail Foundation calls it mile for mile the most beautiful trail in the country, and I would say the John Muir Trail is right up there. This one's longer, but this is kind of what you can expect to see over the next 400 miles. So it is a spectacular trail, and I'm happy to share the scenery with you. This is where the Colorado Trail joins up with the Continental Divide Trail for the next 300 miles. To follow up a little bit on what I was just talking about, I wanted to show you another very important piece of gear, which is the shoe that I wear. This is the Altra Superior 5, and I've been wearing this since last summer, and overall I'm really happy with it. It's actually the trail running shoe that's recommended in Born to Run 2. And what I like about it is that, again, it's zero drop, so the heel is the same height as the forefoot. And the reason they recommend this in Born to Run 2 is that it has a little bit of flexibility, because the idea is you want your foot to be able to move and flex naturally. Something else about this shoe is that it's shaped like the actual human foot. It has a wide toe box, and they're really comfortable and lightweight. So overall, I've been really happy with it. The durability is an issue. They last about 300 miles, which when you're doing these kind of trails, I go through more than one pair of shoe, and they are expensive. The most recent version is the Superior 6, which I just haven't tried yet. That retails for like $140. The Superior 5 I'm still able to find on Amazon for about $100, so that still adds up over the course of the trail. The Zero Shoes Mesa Trail is what I tried in 2021, and those are just really ultra minimalist shoes. What I will say is those actually lasted 500 miles and they cost $120. So good job, Zero Shoes, for making shoes that actually last a long time. But why I switched to these is that they have more padding in your heel, and when you're walking, you are landing on your heel. And the Zero Shoes just don't have enough padding in the heel, especially on trails like this where there's a lot of rocks. It was just getting really painful because your heel has no cushioning. When you're running, it's different because you're landing on your forefoot, which does have some soft tissue there. So that's the Ultra Superior 5. I've been very happy with it, and that's what I wear. Okay, that's pretty much it for today. This episode was a little bit longer, but I'm going to be in Breckenridge in a couple days, so I'm pretty confident I will be able to upload it. And tomorrow, I want to show you what's in my backpack, so stay tuned.